Uh, Welcome to our April speakers meeting. And this is actually the last speaker meeting for the season because next month, Ken's going to be telling you about members' memories, which we will have if we get some responses from you all to join and participate. Let's see, what announcements do I have? The usual ones by now. Everybody knows that if you would mute and take your picture down and turn off your video once we get started, it just makes for better reception for us. And if you have any questions, especially during the talk, if you will put them in the chat function, which is down at the bottom, that will be super. And Zane will read out the questions at the end, so we won't interrupt the speakers. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ken, who is hiding behind his burrowing owl, to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Ann.
Can we share screen?
I did unmute, correct?
Yes, you're there.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, thank you for coming tonight, folks, or being on participating tonight. We have two of our very own, Joe Zinkl and Sonjia Shelly. I'm going to talk to us about the Phenology project that Yolo Audubon has been involved with since 2016. Joe Zinkl is a UC Davis veterinarian professor emeritus and longtime Yolo Audubon Society member and supporter. He's a former board member for YAS and has taken part in YAS phenology surveys at Bobcat Ranch from the beginning. Joe is continually active in YAS projects such as bird nest box construction and installation. While working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and UCD, Joe worked on diseases of wild birds, avian cholera and aspergillosis, and the effects of pesticides on passerine species, forest and crude oil toxicity of seabirds, passerine species in forest and crude oil toxicity in seabirds. Sonjia Shelly graduated from Ohio State College of Veterinary Medicine some time ago. Her career focused on diseases of fur-bearing friends rather than feathered friends. Thus, her interest in birding began later in life, compared with many Yolo Audubon members, and she's really good at it, and she considers herself to be a perpetual learner. Since retirement, she's been active as a board member for Yolo Audubon and has taken part in the YAS and the Yolo Audubon Society phenology survey at Bobcat Ranch, helping organize and monitor nest box projects and volunteer for other organizations. And she is a certified California naturalist. Yay! She is often doing something that starts with a B: birding, biking, building, beer drinking. It goes on from there. So thank you very much, Sonjia and Joe. And I'll turn it over to you to start the program.
So tell me again, we share the screen, right?
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. Bingo.
How's that?
And folks, if I could ask yourselves, and it's okay if you have your photo up, that's fine. But thank you for muting yourselves, and put your questions in the chat and we will read them at the end.
Well, thank you, Ken and Ann, for inviting us. And thank you, everybody, for attending. We're going to talk about California bird seasons, specifically a phenology study at Audubon California Bobcat Ranch. I'm Sonjia, and Joe will be coming on in about 15 to 20 minutes. Shoot. Technical issues. But we can't go on until we give tremendous credit to this convocation of eagle-eyed photographers who have very willingly shared their pictures and their astute abilities to capture birds, flowers, fire, and anything of interest out at Bobcat Ranch. These include Joshua Greenfield, Sean Smith, Zane Pickus, Joanne Filati, Volkmar Heinrich, Kelly O'Neill, Will Hemstrom, Dash Wiedhofer, who is also the operational manager out at Bobcat Ranch, Deb Ford, and Paul Jones. Thank you very much. So let's start with what is phenology. It's sort of the nature's calendar, the study of cyclical and seasonal natural phenomena, especially when related to climate, plant, and animal life. Or it's a branch of science dealing with relationships between climate and periodic biophenomena, for instance, when flowers bloom or when birds migrate. Phenology is a topical issue right now, possibly following on the heels of the establishment of the United States of America National Phenology Network. This organization was established in 2007 and largely assembled to store large long-term data sets for a broad array of species throughout the United States. They've found that changes such as flowering and bird migrations are among the most sensitive biological responses to climate change. I've chosen a Bullock's oriole because it's just arrived on the ranch, and this Mariposa lily, because we saw this on our last survey, and I mentioned it to Dash, and he said, well, that's 3 weeks early. And so I thought that was significant. This data that is gathered and sent to the National Phenology Network is then used, analyzed to understand how species and phenological phases respond to changes in climate over time. Some clinical critical applications include management of invasive species and forest pests, predictions of human health-related events, such as allergies and when the mosquito season may be here, optimizing when to plant, fertilize, and harvest crops, understanding the timing of ecosystem processes such as carbon cycling, and assessing vulnerability of species, populations, and ecologic communities to ongoing climate change. So how did Yolo Audubon get started in a phenology survey? The backstory is that bird seasons began at an Audubon California ranch called Star Ranch back in 2014. The word got around about the National Phenology Network. They trained 10 volunteers, and those volunteers did a study on regular intervals and surveyed 2 different areas of rare habitat. The executive director at the time, Bridget McCormick, thought this is really a popular idea and something well worth doing. So she suggested to Sandy DeSimone to invite other California Audubon organizations or chapters and see if they would be interested in doing phenology surveys as well. So Sandy DeSimone presented to Yolo Audubon Board of Directors about the program in 2016. The board, especially Ann and Ken, presented it to the members, and Joe Zinkl said, well, I'm in, and has been ever since. He was shortly followed by Stan Hunter and then several other regular members. But what is Bobcat Ranch? Bobcat Ranch is a 6,800 acre working cattle ranch. It was purchased in 2007 by Audubon California with the direct intent of conservation and restoration of blue oak woodlands, grassland birds, and becoming a flagship for Audubon Conservation Ranching Initiative. Part of that is to maintain the pastoral heritage that had always been Bobcat Ranch. This is the ranch from a satellite view. You can kind of get your bearings because Poudre Creek runs over here, right along Highway 128. The ranch buildings are right here, and Grapevine Spring, just slightly up the hill from the ranch buildings. And Buckhorn Spring is another known landmark for people who know Bobcat Ranch. This does not want to work. Another way to view the ranch is by habitat. This brownish red area is primarily chaparral or mixed chaparral. The blue areas are primarily blue oak woodlands, and the pale whitish yellowish areas are native grasslands. This is a beautiful day at Bobcat Ranch where the grass is green, the trees are green, and the sky is blue. And this happens a lot. It's a beautiful place to go. Just a short word about the conservation initiative. The primary goal is to keep grass on the land. In other words, habitat conservation for the birds is the primary goal, but at the same time, being able to raise beef in a sustainable manner. How do we do our surveys? Each Audubon chapter sets their own criteria. So we've chosen to do surveys every 2 weeks. We meet at Marketplace in Davis and leave Davis at sunrise, usually in carpools or at least caravanning. The group consists of one scribe or data transcriber, and then up to 6 volunteer birders. All of the data, or the data includes all birds seen and or heard. And when we can, we make notes of any extra behavior such as nesting, mating, carrying nesting material, feeding young, whatever. There's a little titmouse right up on that tree. So these are some of the scenery photos that I'll be showing. But after each survey, all the data is entered in eBird and in the USA National Phenology Network. Specifically, Nature's Notebook is the area that the data is collected. To date, there have been 20 million phenology observation records entered into Nature's Notebook. More than 80 peer-reviewed publications have been submitted, and more than 500 partners are contributing data to this phenology network. Our survey loop is about a 2-mile round, not quite round, a 2-mile loop that's divided into 4 sections. So when we arrive at the ranch, which is just west of Winters, it's about 1/2 hour past sunrise. As soon as the cars are turned off, eager beaver birders are out of the cars and starting to count birds all around the parking areas and making our way up this path past the ranch house to a gate right here. And that is area 1. So we spend some time in area 1 We go through the gate and then we start counting birds for area 2. Area 2 goes up, climbs this ridge, and goes up about 400 feet, which puts us at an altitude of roughly 800 feet. And area 2 goes along till about here. And then it becomes area 3. There's a little water trough here, which is sort of one of our landmarks. Most of the time we are walking slowly, birding along the way. But when we go into area 3, we get up to Buckhorn Spring, and we'll often spend a little longer just at the spring because the birds are more likely to be coming in and leaving the spring. And so it tends to be more interesting and more birdie than some of the oak woodlands. Then we come back to, again, the area near this water tank and head down this way on this ridge to return to the ranch building and parking lot. The surveys, again, it's about a 2-mile loop. They usually take about 3 hours to complete. Is that right?
Yeah.
So here's the first hill that we climb. Oak woodlands back in this area. Actually, the ranch house is just here. So we climb this hill, which is a beautiful grassy hillside. And here's another visual of intrepid birders climbing up toward the spring, which is just past this gray oak or gray pine tree. Things that we see along the way, or might see along the way, poppies, lupins, basalt rock. And I can promise you that there was a pair of mountain quails on this hillside just like 4 months ago. This last survey, we found this jeweled onion, which is a native plant, but also a threatened plant. And we saw maybe a dozen or so that was fun. This is a lupin, but taken from the eye of an artist. This is Zane's interpretation of what a lupin should look like straight on. It's not uncommon to see 4 birders looking in 4 different directions on our surveys. We enjoy, again, the lupin and the poppies, and although the grass has gotten brown, we still have some owl clover to enjoy on the trail. In the spring, there might be clusters of bird's eye delia. Earlier, one of the first flowers that we see a lot of times up near the spring are Henderson's shooting star. And also near the spring is a really big cluster of California fuchsia. And there was a hummingbird here just minutes ago. It's very popular with mostly Anna hummingbirds, but we've had some black chin hummingbirds occur there as well. Other things that are fun to find, California newt, fence lizards, we've seen coyote, we've seen wild or feral hogs, and we've seen deer, especially up on the ridges. And just this spring, Josh was able to capture a photo of a rufous crowned sparrow fledgling. We saw the parents bringing food to it just before. So this is heading back toward well, let me start here. This is from up at the spring, looking back to the east. You can see a lot of hillsides, trees. A lot of times there's a hot air balloon out in that area somewhere, and then agricultural land. Ethereal spears are here among the lupin, owl clover, blue dicks, what have you. And the rumor is that next year we're going to try and do a wildflower tour at Bobcat Ranch. But what are some of the impacts on our phenology data? climate change for sure. And if you want to read more about climate change in birds, Steve Hampton has just recently updated, compiled a list of about 30 to 35 articles and abstracts of academic papers dealing with birds and climate change. You can go to this site, and Zane's going to put this site on the chat box so that you can copy it if you wish. He's also going to put down the web address for the National Phenology Network if you ever want to look at that and go through some of the areas in the Nature's Notebook and that sort of thing. Other impacts on our data: drought. Well, it's happening. We don't know all of the effects as of yet. And then again, fire. And we know that fire has happened. Here's a picture that Dash caught, a scary view of the cold fire at night. And just a review of the history of the fires in the area. The rag fire, before we started our phenology, was in June 2015. And not much of the phenology survey route was burned in that fire, as opposed to August of 2016 with the cold fire. Significant amount of central bobcat from north to south was burned, as well as a significant portion of the survey route was burned. And again, in July 2017, the Winters fire, a significant portion of central bobcat and significant portion of the phenology route was burned. The county fire in June of 2018 burned much of the western part of Bobcat Ranch, most of which is the chaparral habitat. The survey route was not burned, but we think there was an impact on our phenology data, and Joe's going to go into that a little bit. And then July 2020, the LNU complex fires again burned a significant amount of bobcat and most of the phenology survey route, although none of these fires have escaped and burned the headquarters or the parking area, luckily. This is what the land can look like after a fire. You know, grasslands become just black dirt. The oaks weather the first fire pretty well. The trunks are still standing, but you can see that the leaves got scorched. And the second year, the leaves are even higher up in the trees are scorched. And then by the third time the fire comes through, some of the trunks are actually burned. The tree collapses and obviously doesn't recover. Here's a springtime photo of after one of the fires, where you can see the grass is coming back, it's green. The trees are standing, although there is some fire damage here, and some of the other trunks have some, and the trees are still scorched. But over time, they tend to come back, amazingly, and we're thankful for that. And this is a bobcat on Bobcat Ranch, captured by a trail photo at a water tank. And it's my signal that it's time for Joe to talk. So thank you very much for your attention.
Hey, well, I'm going to summarize and give you some specifics about the birds and that we've noticed and I've documented. I document those and send the data off to Stan Hunter, who then sends it to National Phenology Network. I also make copies that send to Ann and Ken as well. And then I keep a file myself, and then keep it in a in an Excel-like file that in this particular computer, and I would like to invite anyone who is interested in it to be able to peruse if they would like at some time. I've done a lot of perusing, but I haven't. There's a lot of comparisons that could be made that I have not made yet. We have conducted 130 surveys, and during these 130 surveys, we've found 124 species of birds. And this information over here just tells the lowest, highest count of either individual birds or species at a particular time. Last year, we had a particularly good year, and I think that's because we had a lot of volunteers who were very good birders this last year, and we did conduct the most, the greatest number of surveys that's been conducted at any particular time last year. So we saw 101 species last year on this survey. This 130 is a little bit, some people might argue as to say it is 129 because we've never in this survey route that we use now, we have never seen a yellow-billed magpie, although in the previous area that we surveyed for about 3 months from in March of 2016 to June of 2016, yellow-billed magpies were seen there. So it's 129 or 100 or 130. These are the most common species we see there. And acorn woodpecker is the only species we've seen every single time. A few we haven't seen, and most of the time I can go back to the data and find that these missing down to about Anna's hummingbird or the Nuttall's woodpecker are occurred during a inclement weather event, and we're out there in a rain and we didn't see very many species. And so it's likely that these birds were there all the time, but we didn't see them. And the other issue is that sometimes we only had 2 people surveying, and that the birds may not have been seen by us or weren't seen by us. Now this is a very busy slide, and it just shows you, this is the number of woodpeckers from over this 5.5 year or 5 3/4 year period of time. We've seen in the data will be much less busy on the other slides that I show you, but I'd like just to show you some of the things that occurred here. The line above 0 here depicts, and this will be on all the slides, would depict how many birds were seen in a particular survey. And there'll be some blanks here. Some of them are explainable. This is because we did the ones with a little fire icon here is because there was a fire at a particular time and we didn't go out there. Oh, this particular point, we were able to get out there because this is the cold fire the county fire that did not burn any of our area, but burned further to the west of the area that we are. These are mostly due to rain, and you'll notice here that there's no rain here, not surprising. And then this was actually a critical point, which caused us great concern because we couldn't get anybody to do it. Several people were going on vacation, and we were unable to do a survey at this time because of vacation times to sunnier places or other types of places. So I'll get to less busy slides here in a moment. Okay, so do that. Just pull it off the line. Okay, somebody hung up there. Okay, so this is the acorn woodpecker, and you'll notice that, or I noticed at least when I put this together, that it seemed like this is the hiatus that we had during the COVID hiatus, and for about 6 months we did no surveys at that particular time. Then under circumstances which included just individual carpooling, wearing masks, and social distancing, we started here in September of 2020 to do the surveys again. But one of the things that I noticed on this was that it seemed like the number of acorn woodpeckers overall at this particular area, and since we started going back there, was less than here, although there is certainly some places here where there are not very many seen at the particular time. So I just ran some statistics on that, and the highest bird from the overall, the average count was 30, almost 31 birds, acorn woodpeckers seen each time. And it was a fairly large deviation there. From this particular area here to here, we were seeing 24.2 or 24 birds per time. And in this area here, the average was 44. I have not run the statistics on this, and I'm not sure, well, I don't have the wherewithal to run the statistics and know where to do it, nor do I know where to cut this off, because at some point you have to cut this off. This might come back to this level here. We'll have to see what happens as this goes on. One of the things we did notice, though, in that first survey back, was we found on September 17th, 2020, was a tremendous blue oak mass at that time. And this is a number of, under almost any of the blue oaks, you could find a concentration of acorns of such concentration. You can see blown up here, the great numbers are here. Interestingly, or was fun to do, is walk across there. It was like walking on bubble wrap, and you walk and it'd be snapping under your feet. And there was tremendous numbers of, as you can see, blue oak acorns on the ground at that time. And this mass occurred sometime during that COVID hiatus that we had here, probably in the spring. My first thought when we saw this was that this occurred because the trees lost all of their oak, or all of their acorns, due to the heat of the fire, although we hadn't noticed that on other fires that occurred back here. Fortunately, Debbie Eden was with us at that time, and she says, I don't think so. I think what's happened, this is a natural mass that occurred at this particular time. Subsequent to that, I checked with some people in Ag and Veterinary Extension at UC Davis, and they indeed had this type of mass that indeed happened throughout, or through most of the blue oak habitat along the coastal range. And so this was probably what happened there. So the hypothesis, maybe a bit tenuous perhaps, is that the increased numbers of acorns allowed for a greater reproductive success, and that this reflects the great increased reproduction in acorn woodpeckers during that period of time. So that's purely a hypothesis. There's no real facts that back that up. And I personally haven't noticed any greater storage in granaries of acorns that are there. So leaving those, we come to the next species, which has been really interesting, and that's the Lewis's woodpeckers. The Lewis's woodpeckers we see 4 times there, once here, about once a year we would see some Lewis woodpeckers. Lots of these, most of this particular time we had some that were in trees here. The others were flyover Lewis's woodpeckers. And on the 11th of September of 2021, just a few months ago, we went out there and saw 18. So, well, that's really good. That's the most we've ever seen. And next week we saw more, and it's covered up here more and more, and we continue to see them. We came out here on the 4th time that we see them, and there was just a very few that we saw. We saw, I think, 4 at that particular time. And I thought, well, this is going to be like, although maybe a higher here, is going to be like these here. And then we won't be seeing them again. Well, lo and behold, the next time we went out there, we saw tremendous numbers of them again, and we continue to see them. And I anticipate on this Saturday that we will, which is the time for the next survey, we will see more of them. Another thing that we've had out there is, of course, we see occasionally red-breasted sap suckers, and we had the good fortune, and Kelly took the pictures of a red-breasted sapsucker, red-napped sapsucker. I guess it's opposite the other way is what in the books, but a hybrid of those two. And here's another picture that she took of the hybrid, and I won't go into the details because I'm not very good at it, how you determine that that's a hybrid. Zane can do that for us. In fact, he did that. We see a lot of common ravens out there. And here you can see, we see them almost every time we go out there. Not every time, but nearly every time. We usually see them like this, flying. They flying from west to east. They apparently leave somewhere up in the chaparral or in the high areas of Yolo County and fly toward the valley. Where they go, I don't know. We occasionally do see one landed, occasionally one carrying an acorn, but most of the time they are flying directly to the east from the area. It's usually in groups of 2 to 4 or 5 and calling. Another species we see almost all the time is black phoebes. It's covered up a little bit here but that's, I hope you'll be able to see that. You probably know that it's, and you'll see here there are places where most of the time we see 1 or 2. Most of the time it's 2. But sometimes when we see this increase here, it is associated, we do see an adult feeding young, and some of these are due to young that we've seen the adults feeding. Some of the increased numbers is that there's been more than 1 pair there, maybe 2 pairs in the whole the whole survey. Sage phoebe are another one we're seeing. It appears that we're seeing greater numbers of them and more frequently as time goes on, and perhaps there's an association with fire damage, and maybe it makes it the area more open form. I'm not certain about that, but the sage phoebe is a bird that we have saw over the last 2 years. We've seen quite a few sage phoebes out there. Sparrows, there are a lot of sparrows there, and this is a list of the sparrow and sparrow allies that we see out there. Juncos see in great numbers, a white crown, golden crown, rufous crown. This is a go-to place, and for those that have never seen a rufous crown sparrow, this is a good place to find them. We can't guarantee that if you come with us, we will find you a rufous crown sparrow, but we might. Lark sparrows, perhaps in some people's opinion, including mine, one of the prettiest birds of all. And then the other sparrows, including spotted towies, that are primarily seen in the wintertime here. Whoops. And this is just a composite of the dark-eyed juncos, golden crown sparrows, and spotted towies, which are the 3 most common that we see out there, although this year we saw a lot of white crown sparrows as well. And I've divided this up into, these lines go from summer solstice to summer solstice, which is, it includes, essentially July to July, almost every year, and you'll see birds here. I've looked at this data and can't find any indications that the birds are either arriving at earlier or late, or leaving earlier than any other than expected. It doesn't seem like this is any different than this particular time here. These are some of the birds that some of the sparrow species. I'll leave it up to you to do your own identifications. I had them on there named, and I said, these people know what these are, so I'm leaving it at that, but I'll leave it here for a second. You can look at this one. And his cousin, and the prettiest of all of them. Well, with exception of this one. That's just, and there, and the golden crown. And then this is the same bird that Sonjia showed, the fledgling of the rufous crown. There was another fledgling of the rufous crown here, and this was the adult that was feeding it. And this is something that it had in its bill that was feeding these birds. And then this is another picture of a rufous crown not associated with this particular phenomenon. Wren tits. We don't see wren tits out there very much. You can see they're nothing. But right here, we saw, and most of the time we didn't see these. These are mostly herd, although there were occasional ones that were seen here. And we saw up to 4, or heard or saw identified 4. And notice that this is just after the county fire. And Deb Ford had the hypothesis, and I endorse that hypothesis, is that she felt that the county fire, which burned not any of the area that we surveyed, but farther up into the chaparral of the ranch, and perhaps the wren tits were then had some significant damage to their habitat and had moved down. And these were usually found in some of the canyons along section 2, where there is some heavy brush up those canyons. And so I think the county fire at that time perhaps caused these birds to move away for a while, and then things recovered, and then they perhaps moved back. And if you look at this, this is Lake Berryessa. This is where Winters is. This is approximately where the Bobcat Ranch headquarters are. And the county fire, which started over in Gwinda, burned this direction and burned some of the area of the ranch up in here. But our survey area, which would be right around in here, was not burned. And this is the area that Sonjia showed this slide before, and it's chaparral, and it seemed to be better habitat for wren tits than here. I've never been to this area, but Ian does the Bobcat Ranch Prairie Canyon, and he's recorded a number of them during his Christmas bird count in this area. And this is close to Prairie Canyon area where he does it, so that we know that those birds are in that area from his data that's done in December each year. Oops. Ash-throated flycatchers, bullocks, orioles, and western kingbirds are the birds that we're beginning to see now. We see them, they come in, and usually in mid-March, and they usually are gone by August. I have a little bit more data here. It shows that ash-throats are here, they're all gone by the middle of July from our area. Here in July, they're gone. Some of them, the bullocks, orioles, which are fewer numbers of them out there than there are of the ash-throats, and the western kingbirds were gone by, we just saw them a couple times that year. So I think the most consistent ones are the ash-throats, but they are usually gone from the ranch by mid-July. And here's a nice picture of an ash-throat taken by one of our photographers. Here's the western kingbird, and it's sitting on a basalt outcrop, which flows in and is near the Buckhorn Spring, and to the west of Buckhorn Springs. Many of you perhaps have seen basalt down in the area along Pewter Creek there, and this is part of the Musin Lovejoy event that occurred. And if you want to know more about it, there's in Eldridge Murrow's and Mark's Horsowski's book called Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, Exploring the Berryessa Wilderness Area. You can find out more about that particular event that spread that flowed from way up in the northeastern part of California down through here many centuries ago. Bullocks oriole is the same one, the same bird that Sonjia showed. Western bluebirds are quite common out there. They do have quite a bit of a variation in the numbers that we see. Sometimes we'll see tremendous numbers. Like, for example, this time we saw about 42 in one survey, and other times we might not see any, or maybe see just one or two. They're pretty common. We did see one out here that was marked and had by Melanie's group over by Pewter Creek, and it had bands on it. I was unable to get a picture of it with bands, but we know that it was one of the one that was hatched and fledged over on Pewter Creek down near Winters, and had migrated up to this area, or had not migrated, but moved to this area. Wrens, excuse me. With 4 types of wrens have been seen here. We saw many, when we first started going out there, we saw many rock wrens. For a couple of years there, we see rock wrens most of the time. They are the ones that are in orange here, and we'd see them. And since this time, right out here, we have not seen any rock wrens at all. So they were there for about 2 years or 2.5 years. And for the last 2.5 years, we've not seen any. One of the unbelievable findings was one time when, let's see, who was Deb Ford was there. Deb was there, and we were finishing up the study, and we found this little guy at the ranch house. This is the part of the ranch house, the building of the ranch house, and we saw the Pacific wren there. I don't have any picture. Nobody has ever, that I know of, at least our photographers, has ever taken pictures of Buicks or a house wren at the ranch, and so that's a challenge I lay out there for our photographers. Eagles. We've seen both bald eagles and golden eagles, and occasionally two eagles. The golden eagles were seen more frequently when it first started, and occasionally been seen now, and then we see bald eagles very frequently here. And there's a tree that Josh measured using a map program. Is about 3/4 of a mile away from the trail, and we look at that tree, and in that tree we found a nest, and we have seen birds, bald eagles flying there. There used to be off about 100 yards to the left of this tree, there was a snag that burned down in one of the fires that we see them on, and they were using this nest here. And you can't see the reading here, but in July of July, I don't remember what exact day, but it was 2019, we saw on this nest, walking around the edge of this nest and up in these branches, two eagles that had fledged, and there was a wind that was blowing from the southwest in this direction here, and they were testing their wings. They are flying up in the air and then landing back onto either onto the edge of the nest, one of them. The other one was up here in these branches and would land there. We watched them for about 15 or 20 minutes, and they would do that and then walk back down here and then try it again, one walk back out in here. And then we came back 2 weeks later, and they were both gone. The Buteos, we also have seen these around here. Ferruginous is a little bit more rare than the other three in the valley here. But the ferruginous hawk, we've seen, we had one that we would see almost every day back in 2018, in late 2019, and in this year we've seen another one. These are pictures that either Josh or Deb took. I think this is Deb's picture, and these two are ones that Josh took of the ferruginous hawks we see out there. They're a thrill. Deb did take one picture where I was unable to find it of a ferruginous and a red tail soaring together. And I don't know if she ever got one when they were both in the same frame. What time is it? Okay.
It's 10 till.
Okay. American kestrels, very common. Several years we've seen kestrels carrying small branches and sticks, and we feel that they have a nest somewhere. We've been unable to determine where that nest is, but we think that they're having successful fledging reproduction out there. This is one of the highlights of our surveys. Of course, we do see a lot of California quail, which is in the green down here, and these little blue dots down here, which I'll expand in a minute here, are times in which we've seen mountain quail there. And here's a couple more pictures of mountain quail. Sean Smith, I think, took all of these pictures. This one says calling here. When we were out there, Sean and Josh, and I think it was John Hansen, were standing up there, and one of them was up on the hill, and it walked down right between two of them and on down the hill. So it walked within 3 or 4 feet of those 3 people. This happened after the LNU complex fire. I think that these birds may have been moved off because of the fires and had come to this area looking for at least suitable habitat to live in and to make a living and to find food for several months this time. We heard them and we saw them several times. In the LNU complex, this is a screenshot of from CAL FIRE that shows where the LNU complex burnt, and Bobcat Ranch is right at the edge. The fire associated with some back burning burned right to the backside of the headquarters and the living facility at the ranch. So it burned in here. Recall from a previous slide that I showed you concerning the county fire. The county fire 2 years before this had burned up in this area. And so there was significant habitat destruction. And many of you who have done bird surveys or birding trips in Ray Canyon have found mountain quail. So perhaps these birds were frightened or had to move out of area which is not conducive to survival, to find an area where they could find sufficient amount of groceries to live. When we first started going out there, we would note there is a large tree in front of the headquarters that has mistletoe in it. But for a long time, we didn't see anything was using it. And then we began seeing phainopeplas using it. And we see a male and a female phainopepla. And these were in the very top of the tree near the mistletoe, which is expected. Oak titmouse and ruby crown kinglets are approximately the same numbers when the ruby crown kinglet's here. And you can see that there are a number of the green is for the ruby crown kinglets. I have this little game I play with myself is when in the wintertime is what are we going to see most of today? Are we going to see more oak? They play a little game for me. Are there going to be more oak titmice or are there going to be more kinglets out there? Most of the time the titmice win the battle, but once in a while there's a time when the kinglets are in greater numbers. Some good pictures that were taken, I think good pictures taken by our photographers. And I labeled these, but I don't think I needed to, but a ruby crown kinglet and an oak titmouse. And more close-up pictures of those two species. White-breasted nuthatches are found all the time. Most white-breasted nuthatches, at least now, are identified by their call. We hear them by their call. And you'll note here that there seem to be fewer numbers than there are from here to here. And I think part of that is due to the fact that we had fewer people on each survey during this particular time, and we started increasing the number of people that were participating here. I also think there's another factor is I think the people that have been more recently going with us have better hearing than some of us, including me, who ran a chainsaw without earmuffs for many years, right in here. So I think this is an issue that has to do with both seeing the bird as well as hearing the bird. And so I think this is more realistic numbers of birds, white-breasted nuthatches out there than this is here. Finches, we clear house finch and lesser goldfinches are the two most common. We've also seen American goldfinches. This is the Lawrence goldfinch. The first time that Zane came with us, he asked me, have we ever seen a Lawrence's goldfinch out here? And I said, no. We walked about 50 yards and Zane said, there's one. And there it is. And that's Zane's goldfinch right there. We added to our numbers and it added to my, actually, I think that's one of the first ones I've ever seen. We've never seen another one since that time. Saying you have to be on your toes here soon. Yellow-rumped warblers We see a lot of warbler species. Yellow rump warbler is the most common. Obviously, they're seen mostly in the winter time and into the spring. Orange crown warblers and other warblers, which I have no pictures of, the black-throated gray warblers, etc. through here. But you can see that they are occasionally seen, mostly during migrations. And then the last thing I'd like to point out is that we have seen killdeer here, and the killdeer are often two of them. And here we've been seeing one recently that's near the parking lot, and associated with it. And the last time we were here, this picture was taken 13 days ago by Josh of a killdeer that was nesting, or at least incubating in a depression in the gravel that's near the parking lot there. So that's 13 days ago, and we're going out there again on Saturday. We'll see if she's still incubating or whether she's hatched those youngs, hatched them and they've left. So this is a interesting phenomena that's occurring there and right near the parking lot. So these are birds. This is a list of birds that I'd like to see or would expect to see. That other surveys have been performed by Frank and Corey and others have seen these birds out here. And the brown creeper, the California thrasher, I know Ian's seen California thrashers up there and when he's done the Bray Canyon, and others that I think are ones that are a common porwell was recently seen out there. So there are birds here that I would like to see and expect to see, but haven't seen them yet. So these are the people that have helped us. And there's 71 names here, 71 people. Perhaps I've left some out here. I've gone back in my records as well as I can, trying to read my poor writing to find out who all is gone. And this is what I came up with, was 71 human beings who have participated in our surveys. And for them, I'm grateful, as more grateful than you can believe. They are very good birders and very dedicated. And so I would thank all of you for having done that. Some people have only participated a single time, but even just a single time has been a blessing for us. So if you're curious about anything, I took this picture out at the slough north of Davis here. But if you're interested if you have any questions or interested in it, just contact Sonjia or I, and we will answer questions or sign you up for a survey. So that's all I have. Okay, if you have any questions, Sonjia and I can try to answer them.
Hi, Joe. Thank you very much. Dash did comment just now that the killdeer have hatched.
They have? Wow. Well,
Yeah.
well, I'm glad that they
So
were successful.
I'm looking in the chat and I'm not seeing any questions.
Well, I don't have any answers.
Well, okay. Why don't you go ahead and, aha, Nicole. We do have, Nicole has said it was wonderful and she'd love to join the survey. So I think you just did a successful recruitment. That'd be a great experience. You can stop sharing your screen,
Yeah.
and we can get the
This one?
deal all the way out. Let's see, there's some more stuff in the chat.
Well, that didn't work.
Okay. Great presentation. Lovely photos. So I think it's interesting to see, especially, with the fires and how you notice some changes in different birds and new birds like the wren-tit. And that's the whole thing about phenology, is how an animal is using something and what time of year.
Ken, I have a question. It's Sammy LaRocca. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
Early on, Sonjia said something about some papers had been presented, taken from some of the phenology areas. And I was wondering if Bobcat was represented in any of those papers.
Generally, well, I don't know. They would be on the website for the National Phenology Network. But I think what they do is take like data from many contributors and do analysis of the data that shows up over many of the phenology surveys, not just Bobcat. But I don't have access to those publications, Sammy, so I don't know.
I
was just
read one.
curious.
I can't
Yeah.
recall exactly what it was, but it did include data that was it was about a species that we see out there, and I presumed that our data was used in the analysis. But if I can find that again, I will get it to you, Sammy. But I just can't remember what species it was. But I do know that there was at least one species that it seemed likely to me that our data had been included in the analysis of that particular species.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sonjia, can you post where people should get in touch with you and Joe? How do you want them to contact you? Can you put it in the chat?
I can put it in the chat. Zane, can you do that for me?
Yeah. One sec.
Just put my email in there.
Okay.
Shelly.
There's
Yeah.
Okay, I have there's a
Shelly,
question here. It's probably best for Dash to answer. Are birds pretty outside of the survey? Dash, can you help us with that one?
What was the question?
Is allowed to bird on the property outside of survey times? In other words, can people just go out there and bird?
Yeah, so can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm here with Matt. So the answer is a little bit complicated. That I think the survey is the best regular way to get out. If basically if you don't want to have to kind of arrange something specifically with me or other management, it's really easy to go on these surveys, and Joe and Sonjia and several other Yolo Audubon Society members really kind of know how to access the ranch, and kind of what to do when they get there. So they're probably the most consistent way to easily get out and bird on the property. But there are a number of other ways to get out and bird on the property. But the short answer is that it's not a public property, so it is you have to set up something with me in order to come out.
But
Thank you.
Dash, also, we should tell them that we are hosting a field trip out there on May 8th, and you can go on the Yolo Audubon website and get the information to sign up for that, because it is limited to 12 people. So don't miss out if you want to go for a nice hike on Mother's Day.
That's a great point, Ann, and that reminds me too that there are a number of other organizations and individuals that lead hikes on the property, as well as Audubon California too. We're actually having a tour on behalf of the CRCC Rangeland, California Rangeland Conservation Coalition on this coming Thursday. So there are events like that. The Poodle Creek Council holds several hikes out at Bobcat every year. We're going to try to do more through Yolo Audubon Society, and a handful of diehard naturalists also do hikes out of Bobcat, wildflower hikes and geology hikes too. Yeah, so there's lots of opportunities.
Ken, you're muted.
Ken, we can't hear you. Are you talking?
There we go.
Okay, all right. Sonjia, question. Where did the groups leave from? Did you mean the Davis Farmers Market?
No, Marketplace Shopping Center,
On Cobell
Where-
Boulevard.
Dos Coyotes and Big Five on Cobell.
Thank you, Sonia.
Yeah, well, usually either what I do is I look at what the sunrise time is in winters. And then I decide, and then I send a message out to people that we will leave the parking lot, parking area near Big Five around sunrise. When sunrise is in winters, that puts us on the ranch about 30 to 45 minutes, about 35 to 45 minutes after sunrise, which gives us the light enough so that you can see the birds better. We used to, a long time ago, we went and tried to get there at sunrise, but the first half an hour was difficult. Although the birds were singing, they were difficult to find.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, then I'd like to just say once again, thank you, Joe and Sonia, for an interesting talk with a lot of information. And it's really, as someone who was involved in the very beginning, it's great to see where the survey results are today. And just how many species you guys have racked up out there. And so thank you very much for your time in putting this together and your time.
Ken?
Present.
Yeah, Dash just wants to say something at the end when you're done.
Okay. So anyway, just saying thank you very much for doing this talk for us. Appreciate it. Okay, Dash.
Yeah, it looked like Zane had his hand up too there. Maybe just, Zane, did you have something you wanted to chime in on?
Oh, no, I was just saying it was a great presentation. I just did the clapping.
Cool. Cool. I just wanted to say thank you to Joe and Sonia and the Yolo Audubon Society. This work is probably going to show us over time an increasing impact. And I think we're already just starting to see it, getting up to the 6-year mark, where we're starting to see some trends, even though we don't necessarily know what they mean. I think in the next handful of years, if these diehards persist, we're going to start seeing something that's really meaningful. So thank you, Joe and Sonia and everyone else who's been coming out. This is really great work.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. It's fun.
Thanks for saying that, Dash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, folks, if there's no other questions, there's a lot more thank yous and good presentations. You guys deserve that. I think we will call it a night and see. Oh, next month. Next month's program is going to be Members' Memories. It's something we've done in May. It seemed to work better in person, but we did have a good showing last year. And what we need are volunteers. I think the information is on the website, not the website, but the Facebook, as to people can sign up to present up to 10 pictures. At this time is up to 10. We don't know how many people are going to sign up. We have to divvy up the time, but it's your birding experiences, your birding stories, your illustrations, could be photographs, could be drawings, could be stick birds. And if you have a story, that's great. If you just have some birds that you saw that you're really excited about sharing, then that works too. It's really kind of loose, but we'll have to see how many people participate. And so just be flexible and how long you'll have to talk. But you're invited to contact me, and information is on the website to sign up. And so I just leave you with that. Again, it's posted on Facebook, and in no, it's not in the newsletter yet. I'm not sure, but it's on Facebook right now. Okay.
And someone asked if it is limited to Yolo County. Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yes.
And why don't I take the last question of the evening from Dale Val, wanting to know when we're going to plan to meet in person again. And we are working on that. And we're thinking that probably depending on what happens with COVID, that starting in the fall, we'll do sort of a hybrid because I've gotten several requests from people who have liked coming to these meetings, but they wouldn't they either live out of the area or they don't want to drive at night. So we're going to try to do it in person as well as continuing our YouTube channel, recording it every month and making it available for people and making it available live, I guess, when we're doing it too. Details to be worked out.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ann.
Ken.
Yeah, yes, Nicole, I think Ann might have answered that. Birding stories from Yolo or outside Yolo, out of state.
Out of
wherever
the
you bird
country.
it. Yeah, out of country, wherever you bird it. Okay, and then we hope to see some great, here's some great stories. I love the story part. Okay, all right, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're gonna close up now and have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, Ken.
Adios.
You can do it.